My name is Camilo Tamayo Gomez. I'm a senior lecturer here at the University of Huddersfield. And one of my areas of research is kidnapping, right? So I have been spending a couple of years now, almost 10 years, exploring different ways to analyze kidnapping. So I'm really, really happy to share some of my research with you today in this online talk. And when Lindsay invited me to deliver this lecture, well, this talk to you guys today, I was thinking how can be more interesting that give you some tips regarding how to kidnap Santa. So in the next 25 minutes, I'm going to do two things, if you want. I'm going to split this talk in two moments. The first part, I'm going to explain you a little bit about how to analyze kidnapping from a sociological perspective, right? So I know that kidnapping is a crime that you hear a lot in the news, and usually is a type of crime where always the sensationalistic approach is always highlight in this kind of news, right? Like always is this kind of about the suffering, the pain, the human impact of kidnapping. But what I'm going to try to do in this talk is to give you a sociological approach about kidnapping and try to do a critical perspective with you. And in the second part, I'm going to give you some tips about how you can kidnap Santa for this Christmas in order to analyze the different cycles that happen during a kidnapping situation. So once again, give you a sociological approach about kidnapping, and in the second part, give you some tips regarding how to kidnap Santa in order to understand the different cycles that are involved in a kidnapping situation. So please allow me to start just giving you a traditional approach, or like some kind of initial thoughts about how we can understand kidnapping. And the first approach is like usually the criminological or legal perspective to understand kidnapping. So this information that I'm going to share with you, you can find it in the United Nations reports regarding kidnapping. That was a report that was released in 2003. And in this report made by the UN, they highlight 4 elements to understand kidnapping, let's say in a traditional way, right? Like how we can understand kidnapping in a traditional way. The first one, kidnapping involves an illegal seizure or deprivation of liberty without consent. So this is the first element, right? So kidnapping is about taking the liberty of someone to move freely, and usually is without the consent of that person. So the deprivation of liberty is the first, like a key aspect to understand kidnapping. Sorry, the second element is the use of violence, the threat of violence on fraud, and the deception in committing the offense. So kidnapping, in difference with other kind of type of crimes, is a crime that usually involves some kind of display of violence, and the the individualistic or the individualistic exercise of violence of the group, like the collective exercise of violence. So it's about the deprivation of liberty, is the use of violence. Usually kidnapping is about holding the victim in a place that could not be found. And once again, this is another important element, how we can hide the person or the victim in a place that nobody can know where it is, and the hiding aspect. And finally, involves the specific objective that the person who is kidnapping someone, right, is gaining, right? So what is the objective? What is the particular economic or financial gain or the political or the other influence that someone can get by kidnapping someone? So this is the traditional approach, right? So usually this is the traditional approach. It's about the deprivation of liberty, is the use of violence, is hiding the victim in a place that could not be found, and usually involves the demand of an economic or political gain. So this is like the traditional way. But when we start analyzing kidnapping from a sociological perspective, things start to be more interesting and more relevant to see exactly what a kidnapping situation is and how we can understand kidnapping. So it's a scholar called Tanzanelli, and she was one of the first scholars to start addressing kidnapping from a sociological perspective. And she said two elements that are really interesting. The first one is there are two essential elements in any kind of kidnapping scenario. One is, of course, the element of human life. So human life is part of this element of a kidnapping scenario. And secondly, the hostage or the victim always carry a symbolic capital. And this is the key aspect here for my online talk today. The victim of kidnapping, the person who is in a hostage scenario always carry a symbolic capital, always have a capital. And that capital can express in different forms or in different ways. You can have money as a symbolic capital. So when someone is kidnapped demanding some money for that person, is because this hostage is carry an economic capital. It's when you see in the news that you kidnap someone and the perpetrator is demanding 10 pounds. Basically, what they want to extract for that person is money, but it's because the hostage is carry an economical capital. But in kidnapping, it's not just about money. It can be seen, of course, about social capital and how some people can be in a kidnapping situation or can be having a hostage situation because the perpetrator want to extract a social capital that can be seen the provision of education in a deprived region or perform some kind of social activity that this person is capable of. For example, I have been doing a lot of research in the US-Mexican border, and some of the cartels usually kidnap doctors to perform surgeries in people that belongs to the cartel. Because imagine if you are part of an organized crime organization, for an organization with organized crime, you cannot go to the hospital and ask the NHS to perform a surgery or something for someone who is involved with the cartel. So this particular group can kidnap a doctor, not just for asking for money, just for asking for that particular social capital that this person has. And of course, in this case, it's how this person can operate or can perform a surgery. But the final element is how you can extract a social capital for this person. Can be seen the provision of, for example, I don't know, as I say, for a doctor, or some in other kind of situations can be someone performing educational activities from people. But it's when you are kidnapped just by trying to extract your social capital. And the third kind of capital is the political one. And the best expression of trying to extract the political capital of someone is when we have a political kidnapping situation. And it's when guerrilla groups or in scenarios of war, of armed conflict, the perpetrator kidnaps someone demanding a political outcome that can be assessed via a political negotiation. But in this case, the perpetrator want to extract a political capital. So what is this interesting? Because they give us a different way to understand kidnapping. And the way is to understand kidnapping as a market for capital exchange. And this is the highlight of this online talk. If we start understanding kidnapping as a market when different kind of capital can be exchanged, is when we start understanding the different interactions between perpetrator and the victim, and how, depending on what kind of capital the perpetrator want to exchange, we can see a different kind of scenario to understand that. So this is the first key message here. If we understand kidnapping as a market for capital exchange, we can have a different approach to understand kidnapping in a more comprehensive way, that making sense. So one of the elements during a kidnapping situation is the negotiation, right? So you kidnap somebody, you hide the victim, and you start a phase of negotiation, a process of demanding some particular capital, right? So you can demand a political capital, economic capital, social capital, and so on. But this scholar highlight three elements that are part of the negotiation process that can define the kidnapping experience. So first of all is silence. Kidnapping is a crime that involves the creation of uncertainty, because when you create uncertainty, that can re-emphasize the value of the hostage. So silence is a really important aspect in any kidnapping situation. The second aspect during the negotiation process or the negotiation phase is how physical harm is part of the interaction. Because when it's a threat to exercise violence, and more importantly, to exercise physical harm, that can assert the power of the kidnapper in the whole situation and can, of course, create pressure to the hostage family. So once again, during the negotiation is silence, there's physical harm, and finally, it's about murder. And this is one of the elements that can change completely the dynamics of kidnapping, because kidnapping is a type of crime where always murder is part of the background. Somebody can die because if this goes wrong. So murdering the hostage or always having this kind of threat of murdering demonstrate the laws of the negotiation, right? And how by murdering someone can send a symbolic messages, for example, during political kidnappings, or on the other hand, can be always a way to pressure the family. So this is what Tanzanelli has been saying. But my research that I had been conducting, as I say to you guys, for a couple of years, I try to address kidnapping for addressing 4 dimensions. So I take in definitely this definition of Tanzanelli that's really interesting about the changing of different capitals. But after conducting research regarding kidnapping in the US-Mexican border, in Colombia, in Nigeria, in Kenya, in Iraq, in different parts of the world, I have been just doing this research, I found 4 dimensions that can help us to understand more completely kidnapping. First one is mutuality and reciprocity. In any kidnap situation, always is an interaction between the kidnapper and the kidnappee, and that creates a social dynamic of mutuality and reciprocity. In other words, is the different kind of connection that these two people can create and how they can change the dynamic of the whole kidnapping experience. So mutuality is the recognition of the other, and reciprocity is when I do something recognizing that person. So in the scenarios of long-term kidnapping is when this first dimension can be seen really, really, really clear. But a second dimension is how kidnapping can create a different kind of social order, different kind of social rules and obligations during a kidnapping situation. Because just imagine yourself being, I don't know, kidnapped for 1 month with someone, right? So you are in a kidnapping situation when you are hide, let's say, in a house in the middle of the nowhere in West Yorkshire, and you have to interact with your kidnapper for a month. That interaction creates a different kind of social order, a different kind of rules, and different kind of obligations. For example, the perpetrator have the obligation to give you food because you need to survive, right, to do all this stuff. That's an obligation. But there's another rule that is like you have to behave in some ways to create a good dynamic between perpetrator and the victim. So it's just to analyzing that, what kind of social order a kidnapping situation can create. The third dimension is the role of emotions, the role of intimacy, and the role of power during a kidnapping situation. So if you analyze all the emotions that can create this interaction between the perpetrator and the victim, how you create different elements of intimacy. Once again, imagine yourself being in the Colombian jungle for 15 years, right? That happened, right? Some people from the police and the army were kidnapped for 15 years in the Colombian jungle. So imagine yourself being in a kidnapping situation in the middle of the jungle for 15 years. That can create a different kind of intimacy with the person, right? And different kind of expression of emotions. And the final dimension is about time. Kidnapping is a crime about time. And depending on the duration, the different outcomes are different. For example, in Mexico is something called express kidnapping. That is an activity when you can kidnap somebody for half an hour, and it's just for really a small amount of money. Let's say 10 pounds, right? So you can go kidnap someone and demand just 10 pounds. So the duration is just, let's say, half an hour and an hour. And that, of course, reshape all these dimensions. But usually in normal kidnapping cases from ransom or demanding money can be between a week to a month, right? So usually what takes, so the time is different. And in political kidnapping can be years or decades. So time is a crucial element to understand kidnapping. So if you want to kidnap Santa next week, or if you are considering start kidnapping reindeers or elves or somebody during Christmas, the first consideration is what kind of capital you want to extract from Santa. If it's economical capital, you just kidnap Santa and demand money. You call the elves or call Miss Santa or whoever is taking care of Santa or living and say, hi, hello, I'm having Santa. He's kidnapped in, I don't know, Slough, and now you need to send me 10 pounds. So if you want to extract money for Santa, it's an expression of economical capital. But if you want to extract political capital by kidnapping Santa, it's a different element. Because let's say you want to pursue the change in legislation. You want to create a more strong law, or you want to create a better law to address climate change. That is something that is for us really, really important. So you kidnap Santa and you write a letter or just call the prime minister and say, the only way that I'm going to release Santa is if you change your policy regarding climate change. So once again, you want to extract the political capital of Santa in order to pursue your own agenda. But what is the social capital? As we know, Santa is really good making toys. Well, I think the elves make the toys. But anyway, let's assume that Santa is really good making toys. And you want to know how to make Christmas toys. So if you kidnap Santa and you say, okay, hi Santa, hello, please teach me how to make the best and most amazing toys, and you can be free, you're trying to extract the social capital of Santa, right? So please give me that element, teach me about something. So you are not demanding money, you are not demanding any kind of political outcomes, you are demanding some skill that Santa can give to you. So this is another element. Or for example, how to manage elves, right? I guess it could be really, really stressful being the North Pole and having to manage all these elves. So if you want to have that particular skill, you can kidnap Santa and say, please teach me about that particular skill. And that is an element of that. Or finally, you can just kidnap Santa for a cultural capital. And this cultural capital can be expressed in the ways that he is a symbol of Christmas. So if you want to kidnap Santa and trying to extract the cultural capital can be seen as a way to extract the symbolism on the cultural and iconic aspect of Santa during Christmas. So this is the first step, right, guys? If you want to kidnap Santa this Christmas, please decide what kind of capital you want to achieve by kidnapping him. And the second part, this is a more practical thing. So once again, think about what is the reason behind kidnapping Santa. It's not just about money. It can be really boring for another stuff. But the second part is trying to understand the cycle of any kind of kidnapping situation. And if we agree that Santa is a carrier of symbolic capital, or can carry any kind of capital, let's say social capital, there are going to be five stages, right? So the first step is how it's going to be the abduction of Santa. That's the first element in any kind of kidnapping situation. The different conditions that you do in order to abduct or take the hostage. And that implies surveillance, that implies collect different kind of information in order to know how will be the best way to kidnap that person. So the first stage is the abduction of the person. The second element is confinement. Confinement is when you take that person to a place that cannot be found, right? And you have to create the conditions. It's going to be your house. You're going to rent a house to take Santa there. So how is going to be the physical and social conditions for you to take that person there. And of course, all the elements that involve to taking someone into confinement, like the food, the drinks, and everything. So, for example, if Santa has asthma, right, it's something that you have to consider because you need to provide that medicine to Santa if he is going to spend a year or 10 years or whatever. The next step is how you can do the demand, right? And once again, that belongs with the type of symbolic capital that you want to take. If it's money, or if it's a political outcome, or it's a cultural outcome, and so on, you need to create all the strategies to demand, right, your particular claim to the, let's say, Miss Santa Claus, or the elves, or the reindeers, I don't know, but you have to think who is going to be the person who can take care of that a particular aspect of the kidnapping situation. The next step is the negotiation. So you have to create the conditions to negotiate with the person or the collective who are you doing the demand. And finally is the outcome. And there are usually three types of outcomes in any kind of kidnapping situation. The first outcome is the release of the person. So Miss Santa Claus send you the money, so you release Santa, it's fine. Or the Prime Minister changed the legislation. Now we have a better law to address climate change, so you can release Santa. So basically, the person can go free. The second outcome is that Santa can escape, right? So you did something, I don't know, wrong or whatever, and Santa escape. That's an outcome. So Santa just go and take the bus from Sladwith to Huddersfield, so he escaped. Or the final outcome is that Santa can be killed or can be dead. So once again, you need to understand the whole cycle of any kidnapping situation to see how you can prepare different strategies for that. But the most important message here is how you can understand kidnapping for this exchange of different social capitals and how you can understand the different dimensions and elements that are involved in this type of crime. So thank you for coming to this Christmas online talk, and hopefully see you here at the university in the future. These are my email, my Twitter account, whatever. If you want to ask me anything, or if you're more interested to know about how to research these kind of topics, please get in touch. And I'm going to pass now to Lindsay, and thank you so much for coming to this online talk.